Hey, Larken Rose here. I always say I'm going to try to keep my videos short, and I almost always fail. I think this one's actually going to be short. We'll find out. So every once in a while, including yesterday, I get comments from people saying, why don't you talk about agorism? The philosophy of agorism. Why aren't you promoting that? Why don't you talk about that? And the reason I don't talk about the philosophy of agorism is it isn't a philosophy. It's a tactic based on the philosophy of voluntarism. And it's awesome. I'm all in favor of it. But I think it's weird to talk as if that's a philosophy. Now, to those of you who don't know, it's basically we're going to find ways to trade beyond the reach of the state without them robbing us, without them monitoring and controlling what we do. But it starts with free market voluntarism of we get to trade with each other. We don't have any obligation to tell political parasites about it or give them a cut of it, which is absolutely true. And I'm all in favor of people finding any way they can to trade outside of the reach of political psychopaths. So I'm all in favor of it. My only objection, if you can call it that, is feel free to give some counter argument, but to me, it's not a philosophy at all. It's voluntarism and a particular tactic used to try to serve that end, which is fine. It's awesome. I'm all in favor of everything I've seen agorists do and say, except them pretending it's a philosophy. It's sort of like saying, well, I am a voluntarist who believes in wearing socks and shoes every day, and I'm going to give that a different philosophical name. Why? You're a voluntarist. You're just describing something you're going to do. And you can be a voluntarist who's a pacifist. You can be a voluntarist who doesn't advocate statism but goes along with a bunch of things to avoid pain for themselves. You can be a voluntarist who forcibly resists state aggression and has shootouts with fascists. There's 80 million things you can do and still be a voluntarist. To be a voluntarist means you advocate a stateless society where ideally all human interaction would be voluntary. Doesn't mean you're a pacifist, doesn't mean you don't believe in defensive force. But you can advocate that and then do a bajillion different things. Like, I know people who really wish they could not be robbed, but have very successful businesses that are out in the open in public, and right now they don't see a way to be agorist where they can trade without the government stealing a cut. So they're like, yeah, it'd be fun to get there at some point. But right now, the business I'm in, a lot of these people became anarchists while they were already successful in business. And they're like, ooh, yeah, I don't like feeding the state, but right now, it doesn't seem like a good idea to just bail on this. So right now I'm kind of in the mainstream economy, including getting robbed by the state, until I can find a way to do that. That's all just tactical stuff. That doesn't change the philosophy. So, I mean, I guess you can call that a criticism if you want, but it's just a semantics criticism of calling that a philosophy when it's just a tactic inside of voluntarism. But aside from that little critique of semantics, I'm absolutely all in favor of what gets called agorism, which is people trying, I do plenty of it myself, people trying in every way they can to find other voluntarists to trade with in goods, services, whatever it is, to whatever extent you can do that. Now, there are limits to how much people in different situations can do that. There are limits to how much I'm able to do that. I do it when I can. And there are some people who are sort of hardliners about never do anything that fuels the state at all or pays any tax. And I don't criticize them for that. I mean, it's a pretty difficult thing to do in modern America. But if you can do that, outstanding. Now, if they turn around and try to condemn anybody who pays any tax, if you buy a gallon of gas, you paid excise tax to the feds and the state and whatever else. unless you're like refining your own oil to make your own gasoline, you're probably paying taxes. And I'm not going to condemn somebody for getting robbed when life paying zero taxes would be borderline impossible. Now, minimizing it as much as you can, yeah. And if somebody can actually manage to do it without paying any tax, which might also require not using dollars because of the whole Federal Reserve and fiat currency thing basically functioning as a tax, robbing anybody who's holding onto a dollar bill, robbing them of their buying power. But that may be nitpicking a bit. So, but yeah, that's why I don't talk about it as a separate philosophy, and I hardly ever use the term, because to me it's not it's a tactic. It's a cool tactic. I hope more people do that. I talk about the tactic all the time of people trying to find ways to trade in the black market. I love how they like villainize. How dare two people voluntarily trade without telling our ever-loving, all-knowing masters and giving them a cut. Like, oh, that's the shady black market that's working under the table and hiding from our benevolent overlords, who of course are entitled to a cut of everything we produce. No, they're not. So that terminology is all just ridiculously silly. But yeah, I'm all in favor of people finding any way they possibly can to interact and trade beyond the reach and control of parasites. Part of that is if people use crypto, or people can go old school and use precious metals, silver and gold and stuff. So yeah, I'm not at all against it. I just don't use the term because to me it's just a weird term semantically, because to me that's not a philosophy. That's a tactic you use when you're a voluntarist. And that's all. So that's why I don't use the term. I talk about the tactic all the time. I talk about the philosophy all the time. I don't bunch them together and then use that label for it. And, I'm not going to condemn people for using the label. It just seems a little bit weird to me. I mean, for that matter, so does the term anarcho-capitalist, because to me that's redundant. There isn't such thing as freedom if you don't recognize private ownership of things, meaning somebody has the exclusive right to use something. And if it's yours, you get to decide what's done with it, including loaning it to somebody else if they pay you for it, like renting it, or using it to make stuff that you then sell to somebody, means of production. So that's the same reason I don't use the term anarcho-capitalist hardly ever, because to me that's redundant. To be an anarchist requires that. Now, the anarcho-commies make up all sorts of weird excuses for why they advocate this weird collectivist, economically ignorant idea, and then somehow make that still be anarchist. Well, if you want to voluntarily try that stuff over there, but you're not forcing it on me, okay, you're still a voluntarist. I don't think it's going to end well for you, but I'm not going to interfere. But if you're not forcing it on me, okay, we're just voluntarists, and that's a thing you're going to try to do. Okay, I'm fine with that, even if I think it's a bad idea. So I think a lot of these different terms are sort of either unnecessary or redundant or just sort of semantically awkward. But that's literally my only complaint with agorism. Like, all the people who are into that and doing that, that's awesome. I can nitpick about whether that should be a word, but who gives a shit? Like, I love the fact that more and more people are trying to do that and trying to build networks where they can trade and interact with people outside of the reach of the ruling class. And the more that happens, the weaker the ruling class gets. And one of the sort of long-term goals of agorism is to basically build a whole economy outside of the control of the parasites, and so the parasites just fall over. I mean, that's kind of what happened in the Soviet Union. They weren't voluntarists, but people trading in the black market over there and trying to be above board in the Soviet Union doing business, like, why even bother? You're going to fail. So eventually the black market was basically the entire market, and then the Soviet Union just fell over. And so I'm all in favor of the people who do the agorism thing just to try to not get robbed themselves, and the people who have the bigger picture of, like, the more we can do this, the more it weakens the state. because we're not enriching them, we're not funding their warmongering and all that crap. So I guess that's about it. Like, I'm all in favor of agorism. I just don't use the term because it seems a little bit weird to talk like it's a philosophy when it's just a certain tactic used by people of a certain philosophy. An awesome tactic in an awesome philosophy, so I'm not against it. But in case you were wondering why I don't talk about agorism, that's why. I just don't use that word to describe it, even though I describe both the tactic and the philosophy on a regular basis. I just don't use that word. So that's about all I needed to say about that. And that was almost, well, not quite as short. I didn't even keep it under 10 minutes. Well, that counts as short for my standards. Lucky I kept it under a half hour. All right, I will shut up now. Bye.